some form of very serious mental illness, but still not meet the legal standard for insanity. Insanity is a legal term, not a psychological term.
Okay, so explain to me then, and perhaps, Joseph, you can help me out with that, what that means, what that distinction is.
I think the doctor stated it best. It's the question, what it really boils down to is, given this person's condition, whether or not they're able to appreciate what it is that they're doing is wrong. That's basically in layman's terms.
Okay, and here was a case, though, where they went all the way back to when this man was a child and claimed that he had this physical abuse that would have caused him to, so many years later, commit those sorts of acts. Dr. Brannon, is that something that you buy? Is that an argument that you think is even possible?
Well, really what you're talking about now is what's called mitigators. There's mitigating factors. There's certain things that we know through voluminous amounts of research that certainly can have an effect. They can set the stage for later violent behavior. They increase the probability, if you will, of violent behavior later in life. So although they may not cause it, they again can set the stage for it and make it more likely for those things to occur. Not everyone who comes from an abusive family situation or who has mental illness or who their parents are mean to them or divorced, not all those people, not even the majority of them, wind up doing this, fortunately. But some people do who have enough of those factors, and those are called aggravators. Sometimes there's things that, or actually the aggravators are all the bad things. The mitigators are the things that we can look to say, okay, these may be some of the things to help us explain what's happened. The aggravators have to do with the bad things, like do they have an antisocial personality, or do they have a psychopathic personality, or were they particularly violent and cruel at the time? And that's what the jury, the judge has to kind of weigh in terms of what decision they make, death penalty or a life sentence.
Again, we're talking to Dr. Michael Brannon, also talking to Attorney Joseph DiBenedetto. I want to get over to Namwa Delaney, who's looking at some of the comments that are coming in from Facebook and Twitter. What are people saying?
Well, Reggie, as we look at these comments as a whole, we find that about 90% of people who are writing in are suggesting that mental illness should not be an excuse in this particular situation and that the death penalty should stand. I'm going to start with Alex, who says, I think a convict should be executed even if he was suffering from severe mental illness. Crime does not pay, and people who commit horrible crimes like this should be punished by the death penalty. Let's move along now to a comment from Wendy, who says, kill him. Whether you are a fan of the death penalty or not, or think he is mentally ill or not, it all boils down to his victims. They didn't live, and neither should he. And let's wrap things up with Deborah, who says, it is a crime for an individual to commit murder, so why is it okay for the government to murder someone? Deborah's been one of the rare comments we got against the death penalty here. The government should hold up the ideals that it wants its people to follow. The death penalty is barbaric revenge. Life in prison is justice. So just a sample there, Reggie, of what we're hearing online.
Let me just ask Joseph about a couple of things I was reading today that his John Allen Muhammad's attorneys have said. They say that Muhammad believed that he was a prophet. They say that he believed Lee Boy Malvo, his accomplice, a teenager at the time, had discovered an herbal remedy to cure AIDS. And still, to this day, he denies that he committed these crimes, and he showed no remorse. That was one of the reasons the jury said they ended up giving him the death penalty in this case. What do you think could have changed in that courthouse that would have changed the outcome of this trial? Had Muhammad said that he felt sorry for these crimes and admitted to them, do you think he would be in the position he is today?
It's difficult to say. When you look back and you see the fear that society felt as a result of the D.C. sniper, people, scared to leave their homes, it's very, very difficult to say. But there's no doubt that if he did fess up to it, did take the approach that he was apologetic, it would have at least been something else for the jury to consider and quite possibly spare him of his life.
Do you think, Joseph, that there was anything done in this process, even leading up to today with the appeals process, that was handled poorly? There have been some people who say that Virginia is too quick with the death penalty trigger. It's only been 7 years since this man was convicted, and he's already going to die tonight. That's much longer than what we see in other states.
Well, one thing that's very, very shocking to me is that we are only now, as I've stated earlier, we are only now hearing about any type of mental illness or defect of Mr. Muhammad. This is something that should have been explored from inception, from the arraignment date, and this is something where people like Dr. Brennan should be involved in evaluating and determining whether or not he had a mental illness sufficient to establish some sort of defense and also to present in terms of mitigation to a jury.
And I'll leave the final word with Dr. Brannon. Anything disturbing you about this case as we lead into just the last few hours of this man's life?
Very much so. I mean, there's numerous indications of major mental disorders. There's some reports as well of the fact of possible brain damage. I haven't seen all of those reports directly nor examined Mr. Muhammad. But it's concerning, and I agree that, that at this late stage of the game to be bringing up serious mental health issues that may have interfered in his ability to be able to express his emotions or express remorse, despite how horrible the acts that he did, those factors in terms of mental illness, severe mental illness, may certainly be a large factor that was overlooked throughout the course of this man's proceedings, legal proceedings.
Interesting to hear your perspective. Dr. Michael Brannon, a forensic psychologist joining us from Florida. Joseph DiBenedetto, he's a criminal defense lawyer joining us from New York today. As you both know, the governor of Virginia has decided he is not going to grant a stay in this, so it looks like as if John Muhammad will be executed tonight. We appreciate your perspective on all this.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, changing gears here, a social networking mashup we'd like to tell you about between LinkedIn and Twitter. Some are calling this a rather strange pair.
Yes.
Here's how it works. When you set your status on LinkedIn, you can now tweet it as well.
Yes, odd bedfellows you might call them, and when you tweet, you can send that message to your LinkedIn connections via Twitter.